Hello, welcome back to the Ultrascape podcast. This is episode 5. My name is Josh Ibbett, and I'm once more joined by Becky Waters. Hi, Becky, how are you?
Hi, Josh. Doing well, thank you. Caught a bit of a tan over the weekend. How are you?
I'm very good. I was in Spain, so I didn't get a suntan because it was raining when I left.
The rain follows you. I heard it
It
was dry
does
in
seem to do
Spain.
that. It does, but there we go. Nothing new there. So I'm expecting some horrendous weather in Greece in a few days' time. But there we go. We've got loads coming up in this episode. We're well and truly into the bikepacking season now, and we're going to start upping the regularity of these shows. But coming up today, we're going to talk about the Tracker Adventure, which I was at the other week, the Unknown Race, the Dales Divide, and then we've got previews for some upcoming races: the Hellenic Mountain Race, the Accursed Race, the Highland Trail 550. And there's a few other mentions. We'll have some news and just sort of catch up on the world of bikepacking and ultra racing. But before we go any further, we do have some sponsors. No, I said sponsors. So firstly, Redshift, who have been with us from the start, they sponsor the podcast. And Becky, have you had a visit from the postman this week?
I have. They left a box of one of the riser bars, the one that you showed a couple of weeks ago. Picked up a pair of those
So that's
in
the
the hope,
Redshift kitchen sink bars.
yes, in
And
the hope that it
obviously,
can
was
turn
it,
a cross bike into something actually rideable.
and obviously you fit them to your bike and you've done loads of miles on them already.
I um I have an aversion to any bike mechanics. I know this isn't something that I should take to the bike shop, and I know I should do it myself, but I'm putting it off.
But at least we can have a nice discussion about your new Redshift bars in an upcoming episode when you finally fit them to your bike. But yeah, Redshift, as you probably know by now, if you're listening, they do loads of really cool components. Basically, make your bike comfortable, which is really good for these kind of long distance races. So Becky's got the kitchen sink bars, and they do shock stop stems. I use them on my bike. I used it in the tracker last week, and suspension seat posts, which will be on my bike for a lot of the races this year. And they've got a handy little discount code. So I'll put a link on the screen if you're on YouTube, or below if you're listening. Yeah, thanks to Redshift for their support. And we have another sponsor for this episode, Peloton sunscreen. I've not really actually used mine yet because it's not been very sunny, but they do this cycling or sport specific sunscreen, the little roll on, which is kind of useful. I actually used this when I did the Tour Divide back in 2019 because it was a nice convenient little container. So they do sunscreen and also the little after sun stuff, which again I've not managed to use yet. Maybe we should see if we can get sunburn and test it out so we can give true feedback. Are you up for that?
Yeah, why don't I wear the sunscreen? You don't wear it, and we'll do a little
Okay.
comparison.
So yeah, well, that'll be something to report back on in a future episode. But yeah, Peloton again, they've supported us. There's a discount. I'll put it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or down below if you're listening. And so yeah, check it off. Check it out. There's 20% off, I think, on their website, which is a pretty good deal. Certainly if you live in a sunny country, anyway. Maybe not so good for the UK. But there we go. Thanks to Peloton for their support. So yeah, should we crack on with the news, Becky?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, just a couple of pretty small or smaller races, kind of grassroots races, which are popping up over the next month or so. So we'll just briefly cover some of these, just to give them a mention more than anything. So first up is Tour Divide, not that Tour Divide, TOR Divide, which is a very small event in the Peak District in the UK. So there's a 150 and a 250 kilometer route. Basically, it's a mountain bike event. I think it's next weekend actually, or the same week, or the weekend before Hellenic Race. But I'm actually hoping maybe to do a little midweek ride around the route before the event as a kind of a warm up for Hellenic actually, just to ride my mountain bike before I actually go to Greece, which would be cool. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I might make a video if I do that. So yeah, what else have we got coming up, Becky?
This weekend, there's a local to me event called the Wild West Country. It's organised by Rob Gardner. He runs the Follow My Challenge UK. So a lot of people may not know him, but they will have definitely seen his work. He also organises the Perfidious Albion and the Mountains of Mafinian, which are all based in the UK. The Wild West Country starts near Stroud, which is north of Bristol, west of Cirencester, for anyone who's unaware. There's not really many reference points around there, but it's about 840 kilometres and it goes around the west country of the UK, which for a lot of people will know is particularly hilly. There's very little flat around the west country. But regardless of that, I think it's still a really good first event for someone who's looking at taking up bikepacking.
Yeah, it's a good test, isn't it? It's good to test yourself on like that kind of undulating terrain, because it really does weigh you down. There's no soft pedaling, is there? So
Definitely.
yeah,
It's considered an all-road event, and even though there is a lot of climbing in it, I think the rest of it makes it a fairly accessible event. There's a lot of shops around. You're not anywhere remote. It's a fairly populated area, so there's no risk per se.
and that's the I think Rob has basically designed all of his is it 3 or 4 events now with I guess beginners, or people who want an introduction into the sort of world of bikepacking. So yeah, definitely worth a look if you think if you've not tried bikepacking, or you want to try doing slightly longer events. They're all excellent, and if you're based in the UK, normally fairly easy to get to. So yeah, on to the next event. I mean, there's a question mark over, is this an ultra or is this gravel? Much like the tracker. I mean, there's probably a debate that will go on and on and on. But Unbound Unbound Gravel is pretty much the world's biggest gravel race. I think it's K for the men's race, or for the main race. There's men's and women's races, which are both separate now. And then is it like 500k or so for the XL race, something like that. But there's some pretty big names lining up for it. So Lachlan Morton, he won the men's Unbound 200 last year. This year he is taking on the XL, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, he's going to be lining up for that. It could be the first guy to win both of the big races there. But also Robin Gempele, he's going to go to the Tour Divide. So he's out at Unbound XL as a bit of a warm-up before Tour Divide. So Robin's, as we've discussed before, is a world-class rider. He's got world-class pedigree. It'll be interesting to see how he compares to Lachlan Morton. So it doesn't matter whether you think it's a gravel race or an ultra race, it's kind of worlds colliding there. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that pans out. So that's May 30th. So we probably won't quite get our next podcast out before then. But yeah, keep an eye on that at the end of the month. What else have we got, Becky?
Back in Europe, we have an event called the Seven Serpents. It starts in Ljubljana, in Slovenia. There's actually 2 events. One's called the Quick Bike. That's 500 kilometers, and that starts this weekend. And then there's the Seven Serpents, the original one, which starts next weekend, which is 850 kilometers. And it just looks like a really neat, enjoyable gravel event. It's not too competitive. A couple of people do race it, but for a lot of people, I think it's a little bit more social. And it's organised by a guy called Bruno Ferraro, some of whom will know, and he also organises Mother North. And it's an event that I'm particularly taken with because it's always sunny, I think.
You say that though. Seven Serpents has had some pretty horrendous weather over the last couple of years. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, oh, we're going to be riding around Croatia and these kind of areas. Is it actually going to be sunny?
It will be, Josh, because you're not there.
Oh, true. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They'll need the peloton.
Further south in the Balkans will be in Greece, where I'll be. It'll be horrendous. Talking of potentially sunny events, so another event happening in the next few weeks is gravel birds in southern Portugal around Alatanjo. I've ridden quite a lot in that region. It's really cool, quite rural, some really good gravel roads. And so 750 kilometers of riding. Rider of note is Sofian Sahili. He's out there racing, so should be a potentially good race to watch. So yeah, that's another one to keep an eye on. So yeah, lots going on, and we've not even talked about the main races that we're going to be discussing coming up. But as well as racing, there's a lot of things going on in the world of FKTs as well. So Becky, do you want to run us through some FKT news?
Yeah, we don't cover so much of the FKTs, largely because it is a whole other world, but a British guy called Lawrence Walters, or Los Walters, a couple of people know him as a Pan-Celtic alumni. He just set a new record on the circumnavigation of Australia on a fixie, which is the same thing that Lachlan Morton did a couple of months ago, but he obviously did it on a normal bike and fully supported. Loz was unsupported, and it totaled about 5,000 kilometers. Sorry, 15,000 kilometers.
Small difference there.
15,000 kilometers, and he actually kicked it off by doing the Indy Pack over a month ago. He was out there for just over 50 days, which is stunning.
It's a long time to be riding a bike in one gear. I wonder how his knees are.
It's also more than one lunar cycle, which I love, because how rarely are you outside for a full lunar cycle and you see all the transitions.
That's a hell of an achievement. And if you've seen there's a really good film about Lachlan Morton and his attempt. And that looked really tough, with Lockie, who's like basically a pro cyclist. And he had like full support crew, fancy bike. If there's a problem, you just get a new bike out. And then Loz has just gone as fixie, one bike, carrying all his stuff. So that just puts it in perspective as to, what a good record that is. So yeah, good on him and congratulations. Yeah, congratulations, Lawrence.
Elsewhere, back in the UK, there's an attempt on the Le Joggle route, which is Land's End to John O'Groats and back to Land's End. So it's 2,700 kilometres in total. It's a woman called Sarah Ruggins, who anyone who watched TCR last year will probably be familiar with. The current record stands at about 5 days, 18 hours, which is set by James McDonald in 2017. That's the overall record. Whereas the women's record is 10 days and 5 hours, which is set by Louise Harris in 2023. So I think Sarah Ruggins has taken this extremely seriously. She's not just aiming for the women's record. I think she's setting herself up for the overall record. So we shall see. That is on Follow My Challenge if anyone wants to follow along.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. And I think in that scenario, I mean, if you've got a bit of TCR experience, then that women's record is probably quite an enticing kind of carrot to go for. But you've got to aim for the men's, haven't you? There, it's that kind of distance. I think we've seen women, winning these races and things, and it's totally in the realms of possibility. So really cool to see how she gets on. When does she start? Have you got a date for it?
She starts this weekend.
Okay.
Not exactly sure.
Yeah.
So best of luck to Sarah.
Yeah. Good luck there. Other things. Well, we talked last week a little bit about the sale of Komoot. And interestingly, a lot of the events they did sponsor seem to be swapping to Riber GPS. Funny that. A lot of uncertainty there. But yeah, Transcontinental Race have picked up, or basically all of the Lost Dot events. So the Accursed Transcontinental Race, Trans-Pyrenees at the end of the year, they've all swapped to Riber GPS as their route provider and sponsor. So yeah, I wonder if that's kind of the result of the Komoot sale and a bit of uncertainty around that, or whether they've just dropped all their events and races and athletes. But yeah, it's good to see that Riber GPS are picking up some of the slack there. So hopefully, like some of these smaller events which do rely on a bit of support to run, hopefully they'll still be able to carry on, as planned. Right, so let's move on to the next part of the podcast after rattling through all that news. So there's still so much to go through. Let's focus on some of the races that have happened in the last month or so. So, Becky, do you want to run us through the unknown race?
Yeah, so the unknown race is now known, and we actually know what happened. The riders started.
We didn't know when we were watching the tracker, though, did we? Without being facetious, it is quite hard to watch because there's no checkpoints on the tracker, so you don't actually know where anyone's going.
Well, you talk about checkpoints. In the past, they've typically only had 2 or 3 checkpoints. This year, they totaled 7 checkpoints, starting and finishing in Lucca. And interestingly, the first checkpoint was in 2 parts. So there was a checkpoint 1A and a checkpoint 1B, and they were either side of a mountain. So to get from A to B, you had 3 options. Whether you took the long road, which is added about 20 kilometres, but all tarmac, you could take a gravel route, or you could take a hiking route. And bearing in mind it was still the end of April, I think most people took the route given the snow and the conditions on the more direct but off-road gravel or hiking routes. Yeah, but either way.
Weather was a bit of a factor, wasn't it? And I don't know, it struck me that a lot of people were quite surprised that it was bad weather. Like central Italy in that time of year can be unpredictable.
I think you just know places a lot better than most of us. I picture Tuscany and I picture Strade Bianche and it's dry, dusty roads.
Picture watching the Giro d'Italia every May and it's always horrendous weather. But that's because I'm a loser and watch pro cycling all the time.
So our victor at the unknown race was Bruno Vicht, who he came 3rd at TCR last year. So it's nice to see him win a race. He beat Christoph Strasser, who was 2nd again at TCR last year. But they've swapped places, is what I'm saying. He came home in just under 50 hours after taking an early lead, and he was first into all the control points after CP2, so he very much led for the majority of the race. After him, Christoph Strasser came in 2.5 hours later, and then Ricardo Cuja came in another 2.5 hours later. Race favourite Robert Muller scratched due to bad weather and not enough clothes.
And he didn't scratch because of bad weather. He scratched because of not enough clothes. I think it's I think it's just to point that out because I don't know. I'm going to go on a rant now, but I mean, everyone's got the weather forecast. You should know that it's potentially going to be bad weather and carry appropriate clothing. Um, I mean, you can travel to the start of these races with more kit than you need. You don't have to take it, but if you don't have it with you, you should plan and take warm clothes and rain trousers and gloves. I remember watching the tracker on the Instagram, and there was just a lot of people in cycling shorts in horrendously rainy conditions, shivering. It does make you wonder why they weren't wearing waterproof trousers. But there we go. That's just because I'm old and boring and, sound like someone's dad
I was
now.
going to say, you are sounding much like a dad now, John.
This is coming from the person who 10 years ago in TCR did it with a windproof jacket that wasn't actually rainproof.
Yeah.
I was lucky that it didn't rain too much. So yeah, but I guess I learned some of those lessons the hard way. But anyway, carry on, Becky.
Robert, yeah, I mentioned about Robert Miller scratching. He was one of our race favourites, and I think we commented on how different his approach is to a lot of people. He's very gung-ho, and there are lots of photos of him. I think you mentioned about one with a water bottle on the front of his bike.
Yeah, the race across Austria. He made an aero fairing out of like one of those big 5-litre bottles, which is quite funny.
I was particularly amused by something that on the Dot Watch commentary, Heike Olten was writing it for us, and she summed it up really nicely. So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from that. Robert was still making some last-minute preparations, setting up a new head unit to complement his phone, which has a broken screen. Fingers crossed it doesn't see too much rain. Christoph seemed to take a different approach, riding with 4 tail lights. One could be broken, one lost, one with an empty battery, and he still has a spare.
But he still stopped because he was cold, so he should have taken an extra pair of rain trousers.
Yeah. Elsewhere in the women's race, Elodie Robert was our leading woman, and she finished 8th overall, about 12 hours behind Bruno. I had a quick look and I can't see any ultra results for her, but I think she's done quite a lot of Gran Fondo style events. Women's favourite Jana scratched at CP4 after only 500 kilometres of racing due to a lack of motivation. And it got me thinking.
It did look quite cold in the photos though as well.
It got me thinking about decisions on how far to push yourself early in the season, because you only have so many kind of mental matches to burn.
And physical, to be honest. If you do get like really hypothermic, it takes a lot out of your body physically. You can like burn through fat. A lot of these people are quite skinny anyway. And then you get really cold and your body just is burning energy and you can like really get quite skinny. I found it a bit last year. One of the reasons I fell apart a bit, TCR, I think I did too much too early, was really lean the whole way through the year. And then when I needed those reserves in transcontinental race, my body just sort of said no.
So, I'm agreeing, but I have no idea what you're talking about, Josh. I think
you can dig too deep too early on.
Okay, now you've got me. But that's most of it from the unknown race, although my special mention goes to David Geraci, whose reason for scratching was he couldn't leave the fire in the bar. And I think we've all been there.
That's a good enough reason as any, isn't it?
Definitely.
Right, on to another event. And this is one I was actually at last week, which was the TRAIL550 or Tracker Adventure. Again, it's this kind of weird grey area. Is it an ultra? Is it a gravel race? Actually, I was riding with, it was quite a big group at the start, and Seb Brewer came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, I need to talk to you about your podcast. I think these races definitely are ultra races." So there we go. Seb's given us the answer. But I think the caveat is for people at the front, it's basically a big gravel race. But further back, when you're taking 1 or 2 nights, it is an ultra. So I set out personally with no sleep gear, so I had to get around, and I think most of the top 30 or 40 decided they were going to sleep through that night, or maybe sleep on a park bench for half an hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a good event. So the winners were Svenja Betts was the first woman. So she also won the Unbound XL last year. Again, she's not done much in the way of ultra racing, but seems to excel at these kind of, borderline races, long gravel, short ultras. She did a really strong ride, around 28 and a half hours, I think it was in total. And the men's winner overall as well, was Victor Bozzoni. So he's a young guy, but I think he's going to start making a name for himself in the sort of the wider bikepacking world soon. Last year at the Transcontinental race, he was the guy that left his passport in a hotel room and only realised 200 kilometres later down the road. But where most people would have scratched, he decided to turn around, ride back to the hotel room, pick up his passport, and then retrace his route again. And I think this was fairly early on. Potentially a few big mountain passes involved as well. So obviously he lost a ton of time, and I think he came in 24th in the end. But I think what that really shows is he's got the mindset, the mental game, to be able to win an event like the TCR, and also the legs for it as well, because he did win the Tracker 540. He won it just under 24 hours, winning by about an hour from Seb Brewer.
Wow,
But he
an
also,
hour?
yeah, it was
A
a big
big
win.
lead.
Yeah, and Seb's a really strong guy on the flat, so that says something. So yes, I think Victor's about 65 kilograms. Basically, he disappeared on the first big climb. There was a fairly big group, and he just disappeared, and no one saw him again. But yeah, he's got the engine. But interestingly, 10 days before, he won the Desertus Bikers, which is essentially the length of Spain, self-supported. Around 3 days, I think it was. That's a big effort. But he's managed to back it up 10 days later. So yeah, a name to watch. I think it'd be interesting to see if he's on the start list for the Transcontinental race this year. Because I
Yes,
think
I think he's going.
is he? Well, I
Yeah.
think it'd be one to watch. He's one of these guys that's got the engine. He had a bit of a disaster last year at the TCR, but you learn from experience in these things. So yeah, be good to see him. See if he can take on the TCR. So yeah, that was a tracker. Just need to give a big shout out to Alan Shaw. So you may remember he rode the Silk Road Mountain Race a couple of years back on his Omnium cargo bike. He was back at it this time at the tracker. He rode all the way around on the cargo bike, rather him than me, because basically it's horrendously steep climbs or pan flat, which is probably not suited to a cargo bike very much. But he got round. I think he had 2 nights out on the road. But yeah, Alan got round. Great character.
My favourite moment from the tracker was, I think, a photo you put or of you on social media, and it was you with Lawrence Tendam and Juan Antonio Fletcher.
One
And
of
I
his
just
friends.
thought, there is a 16-year-old Josh Hibbett out there weeping right now. It was
There
so
was.
cool.
There was. I mean, I used to watch these guys. So just to, in case you don't know, so Lawrence Tendam and Juan Antonio Fletcher were riding in the World Tour for years and years. Ridden the biggest events, Tour de France stages between them. Juan has been, I think he's been on the podium at Paris-Roubaix like 3 or 4 times, something ridiculous. So they're top class riders, and they've just discovered this weird little world of bikepacking. And I knew Juan a bit before, and obviously knew of Lawrence from his time riding the Tour Divide last year. He's done quite a few big rides. He was 3rd last year at Tour Divide. And I just found myself riding with them, and not only riding with them, but kind of, keeping with them. And there was just this really funny moment when all 3 of us needed some water in this town, and we just had a chat for 5 minutes. And it's nice. It's kind of like the levels the playing field. It doesn't matter what your history is in cycling. When you've ridden like probably 15, 16 hours non-stop, nearly midnight, and you're thirsty, you just you all stop together with the same needs, and it's very natural. It's a nice thing about these events, isn't it? And that's kind of an extreme example, but even the finish lines of these bikepacking races, everyone who's finished is kind of on the same level, which is nice. That's probably why I've got so many good friends in this world, and why everyone gets on, and why people keep on coming back.
Yeah, it's really unique to be able to line up against some of the best people in your sport when you're a rookie. That
Exactly.
access to the best, it's really unique.
And that was the interesting thing about the tracker as well, because the tracker is a gravel event. It's like, I think there was like 4,000 people across the week. So they have a 360k race, which is like the big, it's probably the biggest gravel race and most prestigious in Europe. And then 200k and 100k. But the 540 kind of attracted some of those real fast gravel guys. I mean, Victor, I think he was like 13th position in the 360 last year, which is pretty much world class. And you got guys who've come from gravel. You've got, ex-World Tour guys. David Miller was there as well, won Tour de France stages. And then you've got people starting off, got Alan on his cargo bike, people like myself, and, Seb, who have done Seb has been European XC marathon champion, as well as doing well at these ultra races. So it's a real melting pot. So it's nice to race different people. Even if it's not, in inverted commas, a true ultra, it's still a hell of a big bike ride. I think it was like 28.5 hours for me non-stop, or 27.5 and like 15 minutes stop time.
What an opportunity.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it, actually, and a good sort of leg stretcher before the Hellenic race in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's enough of me banging on about riding with the old boys. We also had at the start of the month Dale's Divide. That was over the Easter long weekend. It was a fast event, wasn't it, Becky?
Yeah. It's very weather dependent, this event, I think. It's up in the Yorkshire Dales. Bog dependent, yeah. Yeah. Not so much the weather during the event, but very much the weather leading up to. And it has and had been particularly dry in the UK then. So I think we were, given the start list and the conditions, we were all pitching for a few records to be broken. And we were right.
We were.
Kerry McPhee raced for the first time at the Dells Divide. She was first woman at the Highland Trail last year. We'll talk a bit more about her in a second. But she set a new women's record of 43 hours and 22 minutes from Sally Ozanne's 2021 time, which was a little over 45 hours. So she only took an hour and a half off. It wasn't much. Sally Ozanne's time was spectacular, and I think went without a lot of recognition because Sally Ozanne herself is very low key. A man who's not so low key, Angus and Justinas. So Angus raced this year, and he set a new men's record of 33 hours and 53 minutes, taking it from Justinas' 2023 time of just under 35 hours. And Justinas had taken it from Angus, who'd set it the year before. So they're just yo-yoing between the two now. They're the kings of the Dells Divide.
McCormack had it at some point as well, didn't he?
I thought he did, but then I checked, and
he didn't.
His time wasn't, but there was
maybe just won it.
Yeah, I think they had a very wet year last year, so potentially he could have if the conditions had been right. But
the interesting thing about it, regardless of ground conditions, and just from chatting with a few people who were there, it was pretty much perfect weather. Very dry in the lead up, and then not too hot. It sounds weird being in northern England in April, but it was kind of slightly overcast, so you can actually get quite warm on those hills when you were, working hard. So it sounded like it was really good, like a bit of drizzle just to keep everyone cool early on, and then dried up. And yeah, basically the main thing there is the ground conditions. They were saying that some sections could take 3 hours when it's boggy, but you could ride through in like half hour. When you can ride everything. So yeah, that can make a real dent into those fastest times. But regardless of times, I think it's always quite a good yardstick for the Highland Trail race. Kerry's lining up. In the past, Angus has done Dells Divide before top rides at Highland Trail. So yeah, there's some names there to keep an eye on for the Highland Trail, which brings us quite nicely onto some of our race previews. What should we start with, Becky?
Well, I think as we're already talking about it, let's start on the Highland Trail.
Well, there we go.
The Highland Trail is a race up in the Scottish Highlands. It's called the Highland Trail 550, and it is about 550 miles, give or take a little bit each year.
It's one of the originals as well, isn't it? It's been going a long, long time.
It has. Yeah, started by Alan Goldsmith as a warm-up to the Colorado trail race he was doing.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure how effective the Highlands were at prepping you for the Colorado altitude.
Well, yeah, everything but altitude, really, I guess.
Either way, it's one of the most exciting events of the year.
And most prestigious, I would have argued as well.
Yeah, arguably one of the hardest in Europe, I'd say, if you're looking at off-road events.
Definitely, yeah.
Because it's
characterised by if you've been to Scotland, it's pretty unforgiving. Weather, bog, rocky technical trails. Quite often they're hiking trails as well. So you need a good degree of mountain bike skill to do a fast time on there. And you've got to look after yourself and your bike as well. There's plenty of big sharp rocks to smash tyres and rims, and many a rider's been caught out. By the conditions over the years, including myself.
So that starts at the end of the month, and the route is very much categorised into two halves. The first half is up the east. It's a race of two halves.
There we go.
I've been dying to get that line in. Josh stole it from me on another podcast a few years ago. So it's in capital letters now that's my line. The east side of the route is very much follows the GB Juro route, so it's much more rideable, a lot of gravel.
It kind of lures you into a false sense of confidence if you've not done it before, because you think, you hear all these things about Highland Trail. You basically cover the front of the race. If it's a fast year, you pretty much do the first half in around 24 hours, don't you?
Yes, you do, and it's a real false sense of security.
And then you get smashed.
As soon as you start to turn south, it changes. Although this year, the furthest northern point is called the Bealach Horn in all the previous years of the Highland Trail. But Alan, and this is the only major amendment to this year's trail, is not including the Bealach Horn. He's replaced it with the Bealach na Faithé, I think is how you say it.
Trust you on that one.
But the Belag Horn is notorious for the peat
Bogs.
hags, the steep hiker bike, and then the steep descent. That's what surprised me. I was ready to walk up the hill, but I didn't know I'd have to be walking down the hills as well.
The
Whereas
river
this
down there
Belag,
can get high, can't it? I've been through kind of up to my knees, but also almost up to my waist in bad conditions there. It'd be interesting to see how it affects the race, actually. I mean, in theory, I mean, I'm sure it won't be as straightforward. Everyone's looked at the route and said, oh, it's made it easier, but Alan doesn't really. I'm sure Alan's got a trick up his sleeve somewhere that someone's not clocked.
well, I was talking to Alan about this, and this new edition is more rideable and mostly double track, whereas the previous, the Belag Horn, was much rougher and slower. So he thinks while there is a little bit of hiker bike involved in the new edition, he reckons it's still about 2 hours faster, which brings us on to the potential of any records being broken.
I'd
So,
say there's a fairly good chance. Seen as well, if we look at the women's field, I mean,
mm,
3 previous winners. Alice Lemkes won in 2023. Kerry McPhee last year, 2024. Annie Lee, 21. Philippa Batty, who obviously is a friend of ours, she's not won it yet, so she's not gonna be happy with that. So she's probably one of the most ferocious competitors I've ever met. So she'll be up there as well for sure. Emma Baitup, the first woman at the Tour de Wapanumi in Dania, New Zealand, 23 and 24, which is probably comparable. It's quite a tough race, a lot of hiker bike, a lot of mountain biking. Top 20 at the Colorado Trail race. So that's I think the women's race is going to be the really good one to watch on the Highland Trail. What's the current record?
the current record is held by Lee Craigie, and that's 3 days. It's about 3.5 days.
That's a strong record, really is.
I think she's one of her and Kerry McPhee are the only women to go under 4 days, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've managed 4 days a couple of times, but it broke me. So like another half a day is.
So I think given that this route looks to be a little faster, if the conditions hold on as they are and it doesn't get too much rainfall in
Don't
the
say it,
Highlands,
Beccy. It's Scotland.
and how competitive the women's field is, I think there's a very, very good chance that the record gets broken.
Yeah.
I'd put
There's
my
a good
money
mix
on
there, isn't it?
I'd put my money on Kerry McPhee, but
You
who
never know.
knows?
You just never know in the Highlands. You can hit one rock, split one tyre,
That's it.
anything that will miss one resupply. I mean, to be honest though, the fastest people now, they're barely resupplying anyway. But it's one of those races that when you're riding fast, it's kind of a disadvantage in terms of resupply because you miss all the key places that are open because you're riding through in the night. So realistically, if you're doing a real fast time, you only get kind of 2, maybe 3 resupplies.
Sure.
But that saving 2 hours could make a difference. Might get an extra one in there. But we'll see. And then in the men's race as well, for me, the overwhelming favourite is Manu Catrice. So if you remember back in 2023, when Angus Young won, that's when he set the FKT. Manu was chasing him down. He's a really strong rider from Belgium, really good technically. And he chased Angus down. He caught him with about 10k to go, then almost immediately smacked his wheel into a rock and punctured. So it kind of slipped away from him. So it could have gone either way, really, without a puncher. It was a shame it ended that way. And I think Manu thinks it was a shame it ended that way too. So he's back and he's hungry. I know Manu pretty well, and I know he's gunning for it. So yeah, and he's had some pretty strong races. He raced at the Tracker actually in the 360. He was just outside top 10 in the age group, which says something at a very competitive race. So yeah, he's on good form. Be interesting to see. But then we've also got Dickie Ibbett. He was second at the Dales Divide. Again, that was a fast time. So he should be able to, put up some fight there. Sebastian Sarks, he won the unknown race, and he was third at the Hellenic race last year. So again, there is potential. I'm not sure if he's raced Highland Trail before. It's definitely a race where local knowledge does sort of pay dividends. Talking of local knowledge, Rich Rothwell, he must have done it. Must be like the 5th time almost. On paper, he's not going to be as fast as Manu, but he knows how to ride it, and that counts for a lot. He's good technically. So yeah, keep an eye out for Rich. And then we've got Chris Simpson as well. Again, another experienced rider. So yeah, it'd be really good to watch. And well, I won't be able to watch it because it's exactly the same dates as the Hellenic Mountain race. But Beccy, I hope you'll be watching so you can report back for us in
I'm going to be cross-eyed. I'm going to have 2 screens out, one on the Highland Trail, one on Hellenic.
Which brings us quite nicely on to Hellenic. So 24th of May, same start. So this is the second race in the mountain race series. The first one being the Atlas Mountain Race, and the third one being the Silk Road Mountain Race. And this one is in Greece. And it's a bit of a climb fest, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I dug into a bit of the numbers of the Hellenic because I heard it in passing, and I think I brushed it off without really registering quite how hilly it is. So I've compared it to a couple of other big off-road hilly races on the calendar. And if you put it at elevation per distance, Hellenic Mountain Race doubles Highland Trail, and it beats every other race that I put in. It's the hilliest race on the calendar.
Most mountainous race, probably, because he goes up to over 2,000 meters. There's some pretty big passes there.
Mm.
And weather's been an interesting factor. You think, oh, Greece, it's going to be sunny, but when you're just inland there in those mountains, the last 2 years, there's been some pretty heavy rain. It's been kind of characterized by riders not having enough brake pads and just wearing through like sintered pads in a day. Whereas normally you could ride a whole race on a set of sintered pads. I've done a Highland Trail on a set of pads like that, and barely half worn them. So yeah, take lots of brake pads and give myself advice here.
You're just reading your prep notes.
It is, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's basically no flat whatsoever. So there's actually more climbing in a race like the Atlas Mountain Race. So 29,412-ish meters in the Atlas Mountain Race, but that's over 1,300k. So there's quite a lot of flatter sections. Highland Trail 550, 13,982. So basically 14,000 meters, substantially less. Again, there's kind of there's a lot of flat sections or flatter sections in Highland Trail. That's kind of characterized by kind of big off-road sections followed by connecting road sections. But yeah, Hellenic is just straight up one mountain, straight back down again, and then turn around, straight back up, non-stop.
The elevation profile really did look like a saw or a shark's teeth.
Exactly. So yeah, obviously I'm going to be out there. So we'll see how that works out. But there's plenty of other riders as well. So 279 riders on the start list with 27 women. Some riders to keep an eye on. Hannah Simon, I think she's probably a favourite both of us. Coming over from the States, very experienced, ridden Atlas, ridden Silk Road. So she'll be sort of filling up the sort of the series and completing Hellenic, taking part in Hellenic too. Megan Hakkinen, fastest woman at Tour Divide. She was second woman at Atlas last year, or was she first? I can't remember. No, second, yeah, because Marie just destroyed everyone, including me. So yeah, Megan's there. She's taking on all of the mountain races this year. So the full Nelson, as we've called it. So she'll be there. Our friend, Gail Brown, she'll be out there. Looking forward to see Gail.
Gail is very well prepped for this. She just spent a couple of weeks out in the Alps and the Dolomites with a van and has done a lot of hiking through snow. So judging by a couple of...
It's going to be sunny. It's Greece, isn't it? I'm not even taking a rain jacket or rain trousers.
Just take that windproof you have.
Exactly.
That'll do fine. It brings me back to the photos of the first Hellenic in 2023 and the long hikes through snow.
Yeah. Yeah, but that section was actually a checkpoint on TCR a few years later.
Okay.
But in the middle of summer. So it's actually just a nice dirt track underneath. But obviously there was some snowbanks. And who got there first? I can't remember who got there first that year. But they had to kind of wade through this massive snowdrift, which was pretty cool. Oh, it was Adrian, wasn't it? Adrian Ledgety. He got there first, broke the trail, and everyone else just followed him. But
yeah.
he did go on to win. So yeah, and then we got another woman to keep an eye on, Dilara Tuna. She was 29th in a pair at Silk Road Mountain Race in 23.
Yeah, I put her in as a little bit of a wild card. She's done a lot more. Recently, she's done a lot more cycling, but I think over time she's done a lot more running. She's done like 100-mile running races. So I think she's a very well-rounded endurance athlete. And given that, yes. So yeah, bit of a wild card. We'll see how she goes.
And then the men's race, Alex McCormack, obviously winner of the Atlas Mountain Race. Anatol Nimi, I think that's how you say his surname. Sorry, Anatol, butchered that. Again, he was top 10 at Atlas. Alex Kopp, he won the Accursed Mountain Race last year. Maroon Golfman, again, he was just ahead of me on the edge of the top 10 at the Atlas. I'm going as well. So that should be a good little race. In the pairs, Shona and Rich, they are famous for taking on these pairs races on their tandem. So let's see if they're on the tandem or not this time round. And there's a couple of
That's TBC, I think Shona's suffering with a bit of an injury, and pointed out that they were planning on riding separately, but riding on a tandem might actually be a bit more forgiving on the body because she doesn't have to wrestle the bike herself, which I just thought was quite an interesting point about using a different bike.
I don't know how tandems climb though. It must be hard on steep climbs.
Well, that's true.
I mean, I've not
That's true.
experienced it myself, but we'll find out. I'll go and chat to them, and we'll see what the conclusion is in the next podcast. There's also a couple of all-female pairs too, which is good. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of, I guess, getting some women who maybe wouldn't want to take on a solo event straight away into the sport, and hopefully, you know, it allows them to kind of get some confidence and come back and maybe take on the event solo at a later date, which will be good to see. And then just a note on the full Nelson, which I mentioned Megan's doing. So all of Nelson's mountain races. So far, this isn't the complete list because I can't remember the other riders that were in Atlas. But Alex McCormack, Megan Hakkinen, myself, Marone Golfman that is, and Anatol. We're all currently entered down for all of the races. So we're going to Silk Road later in the year as well. So yeah, that's a nice little race within a race. I'm hoping I can kind of ghost them just by being like kind of consistent over the three, not actually winning anything. that would rely on Alex making a mistake there.
I was going to say, at this rate, he's going to win all three, Josh.
Hey, I rode with Alex up the first mountain in the tracker the other week.
Oh, yeah. Did you get any tips?
No, but he dropped me on the second one. So yeah, so that's happening. And so, as we said, Hellenic and the Highland Trail 550 start on the 24th. But just a little bit before that, it's a race that I took on last year. The Accursed Race starts on the 13th of May. So this is it's the fixed route off-road race from Lost Dot, who of course are the organisers of the Transcontinental Race. But it's not straightforward, is it, Becky? What's their little catch to make life a little bit more difficult?
This is, to date, Lost Dot's only no-fly race, which means that everyone who gets to the race has to go overland. And it starts in Skoda in Albania, which is fairly far off of the kind of main European travel network. So it's a bit of an adventure in itself before the race even starts.
Yeah, I mean, having done it last year, it was a bit kind of daunting trying to work out how to get there. But actually, it was part of the trip, and it was good. I ended up driving to Zurich, catching the train down to Bari, and then catching the ferry across to Durrës, and then cycling to the start, which is sort of 60k. But the organisers, Lost Dot, they do put on a bus from Zagreb as well, which is a bit more central on the European train network. So actually, it's not too bad to get to. You just have to take time. You need at least 2 weeks to be able to do this race, which is probably reflective on the size of the field. I think there's 38 riders overall. One of those is a pair. So it's a fairly small race. But it's an excellent course. It's one of the best courses I've ridden. The Balkans are great to ride in. There's some big climbs. It feels pretty epic. The culture's great. The people are friendly. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And I would try and do some daily updates over on YouTube as well. I've got a load of video from last year's event, so hopefully I can try and bring that to life a little bit. And riders down, it might not be a massive field overall, but there's some strong riders. There's not really, well, there's only one woman, so I guess she's our favourite, Jackie Prosser. I don't really know much about her, but yeah, she's the number one favourite for me.
Yeah, pray God she finishes.
Well, yeah, good luck. But in the men's race, Justina Slovakia, obviously last year's Triple Crown winner over in the US and Tour Divide FKT holder. He's going to be racing Trans-Balkans as well. So he's basically doing a Accursed Race and then he'll have about a week, 10 days off and then do another race back to back. Marin de Saint-Exupéry, he is again riding, so he's no stranger to the world of ultra racing. He won the Atlas Mountain Race a couple of years back, and last year he rode to Kyrgyzstan to ride the Silk Road Mountain Race from Switzerland. Well, actually from Hellenic. He did Hellenic last year.
It's becoming a habit of his.
Yeah, exactly.
3-race series and riding between them. It's
quite a nice way to thing to do, because normally these series are quite well spaced out as well, so it kind of does make sense when you're building a calendar. Also, last year's winner of the Hellenic Mountain Race, Chris Dijkmans, really, really strong rider. And I think there's going to be a really good race between those three. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good race to watch. And also it's the last time they're going to run this. I know we've stirred some rumours up with a talk of maybe a different race in a different country, but Lost Dot have kind of announced that this will be the last Accursed Race for a couple of years. Was it 1 year, or they said they'd take a rest? Pretty vague.
Yeah,
So
I almost thought they might be changing the route quite a lot, but this was very much the last chance to do the Accursed in this iteration.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. So hopefully there'll be some news on that later in the year. But yeah, a fantastic route, a really good race. Probably the size of the field isn't reflective of how good the event is, but also it's a really, really busy period. I mean, we just talked about 4 races, even with Trans-Balkan within 3 weeks.
Quite right. A
So yeah,
lot of whom would overlap. I imagine a
yeah,
lot of people who would have got to Hellenic or Highland Trail could also go to the Accursed. They're all off-road races, similar time-ish,
and very
similar adventure level.
comparable sort of parkour as well. Lots of climbing, quite rugged. But yeah, I guess if you run a podcast about bikepacking, it gives you plenty to talk about.
It's been packed.
It has.
I had suggested about the Accursed Race that I think it's one of the best race names that I've seen.
Yeah.
I
Named
think a
after
lot of
the Accursed Mountains, which are kind of the mountain range through Albania there. Albania's
and
wild.
there's
I love it. It's really one of my most favourite countries I've ever been to. I've been through a couple of times on TCR. It's kind of the heartlands of TCR, isn't it? The route always goes through. But getting off-road there, it's just wild, wacky. I love it.
yeah, nice. There's an old folklore about it as well. I think they put it as one of the first posts on Instagram on the Accursed Race page. If you scroll right to the beginning, and I loved it because so many other races have very literal names or very geographically correct names. Whereas the Accursed Race has a story to it.
One interesting thing I saw that they're organising a critical mass in Skoda before the start, which, if you don't
Oh
know,
wow!
is kind of when they're all over. It's basically when the kind of a massive group of riders just sort of do it's not really a protest, is it? But it's more kind of an awareness for cyclists.
Mm.
And Skoda's a really cool town. They've got loads of like cycleways. You wouldn't think it, if you said Albania, you wouldn't think there'd be like a really developed cycle network, but there really is in Skoda. And they've got like the city hire bikes and things as well. And I think there's a bit of a scene there. So yeah, they're doing a critical mass ride before the Accursed Race, which would be really cool. So yeah, Lost Dot is kind of their. I think it's an event that they're using just to sort of raise awareness for no fly and things like that. And it's kind of it's an event that they're not afraid to kind of try things out and do things a little bit differently to the kind of the standard, kind of the standard way these races run at the moment.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
was surprised when they released it. I wasn't surprised at it being a no-fly race, but I was a little surprised that they didn't make Trans-Pyrenees a no-fly race before the Accursed, because, well, so many people get to the start of Trans-Pyrenees by train anyway. You wouldn't
yeah. I suppose then it'd be
change it
making
much.
for me, I think it's like they're making a statement, which needs
Yes.
to be done, to be fair. I mean, it highlights the problems with wider society and flying. It cost me nearly £500 to get there, but put it in context, I flew to Girona last week, £25.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy, really. It does make you wonder. I mean, I know we shouldn't fly as much and we should try and travel overland, but something's fundamentally got to change. Like if you can fly, there's no incentive to not fly. Like a £25 flight to Girona is crazy. It's crazy. I couldn't even drive to Dover to get the ferry for that. It's mad. So there we go. It's good that Accursed are kind of have this race to kind of I guess just raise awareness of some pretty major issues that are going to affect us all at some point. So I'm looking forward to following it. I've got a soft spot for it after last year. It was good. But also, it'll be interesting to see where they go next, if they're going to change the event or if they're going to change countries or routes. If you listen back to our early podcast, we've made some rumours up about that.
We'll have to wait to find out, though. They're notoriously well guarded.
They'll probably be different if it's like a no-fly race around Australia next.
Yeah.
I'll start travelling there.
They've chartered a cargo ship or something.
Yeah. Anyway, on that point, I think we're starting to ramble a bit now. Everyone's probably fed up of our voices. So let's wind this one down. Again, I said we're going to start up in the frequency of these podcasts now, seeing as there's so much going on. So the next one, we're going to try and record it while I'm still in Greece after the Hellenic race. So apologies in advance if the quality is not great. But we'll be able to run over the Hellenic race, the Highland Trail 550, the Accursed Race, and look ahead to the Trans-Balkans, which is kind of, I guess, the last of the spring races before we start looking to the Tour Divide, which would be very exciting.
It's coming quick.
It is. It always is, though, isn't it? Early June. It's here before we know it. And then half the year is gone. So thanks, Beccy, for joining me, as always.
Thanks very much, Josh, and good luck with the final prep for Hellenic.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Josh. Bye.
Bye.